We have tonight a phenomenal presenter, a true member of the community. I feel like I see Nathan at pretty much every event I go to, every showcase I go to. He has contributed knowledge to the community for a very long time. He was an IGDA organizer in Alabama.
That's right.
Right? And he is also the lead developer at our leading game studio, Stardock, which has a lot of representation there in the back. Thank you for coming. Nathan has been exploring the brave new world of AI and all it can do for us. And it has been exciting, it has been scary, and he's going to bring us along on that journey tonight. So everyone, let's welcome Nathan Hanish of Stardock. Thank you for coming.
So first, thank you, Austin and Corbin and Jeremy, for having me out tonight. And thanks to all my friends and acquaintances for showing up tonight. I'll be talking about 60 AI tools for game development in 60 minutes. Austin told me I have a little extra time, so I may stop and breathe. We may not hit the 60-minute. I'd like to consider this sort of my gift to the community. I've been eyeballs deep in this stuff since last August when I showed you guys the Below the Root project, where I was digging into Stable Diffusion at that time, and of course branched out way beyond that now. So I will be sharing this presentation that's in the Discord chat now. Feel free to share it around. I'd love for this to get some legs under it.
I'm going to share it on the Twitch too, if you're fine.
That'd be fine. Tell me when you're...
Yeah, whenever.
All right.
Welcome to my presentation on AI tools for game development.
So I started with, this was the cover art for Galactic Civilizations 4 Supernova, now in early access on Steam and Epic. Like I'd love to have that guy talk, but we don't have a 3D model, it's not articulated, it's not rigged. I literally have an image. So I drug it into Studio DID, and I typed in some text, and I hit enter, and 5 seconds later I had this. Which is just kind of the teaser of, oh my god, this stuff is incredibly powerful, it's happening incredibly fast, and it's incredibly accessible. Now I need to get back to my slideshow. All right, so I have to apologize. There are going to be some black text on white slides at the beginning. There is some technical information we just have to go through. I promise there are moving pictures throughout. So I want to put up an image here. I asked, I think it's Stable Diffusion, to make me an LLM diagram, and this is what it came up with. So you guys can read the slide. That's what I'm going to be talking about. And then we'll have a discussion at the end. All right, so shameless plug. We already got through that. All right, so one of the cool features I've gotten to work on in the last few months, and special thank you to Brad Wardell at Stardock for giving me the opportunity to work on probably the coolest thing I've worked on in my career, which is the Alien GPT feature for Galactic Civilizations 4 Supernova, where we've deeply integrated AI into allowing players to create their own factions and civilizations and leaders and such. So both the imagery and the text describing the civilization and their names and the conversations that the different factions have with each other. The results are regularly like fall out of my chair funny. It feels a little weird to be crediting an AI with creativity, but here we are. So with this feature, we've been able to create factions for a while, but now you can just put in, short description, an international gang of game developers. And the AI comes up with a motto or slogan: crack the code, conquer the cosmos. Yes. In the depths of space, a shadowy group lurks, known only as the Codebreakers Collective. With their origins shrouded in secrecy, these game developers have banded together to take on the galaxy's most challenging puzzles, and it goes on from there. And this is good text. All right, so a little bit of background here. When you dive into the various AI tools, you're going to see these terms and you're going to be like, I don't know what a tensor is. Well, a tensor is, you've heard of scalars and numbers, vectors, matrices, and how they relate to each other. That's basically what's meant by a tensor. And for years, NVIDIA and all the other GPU companies have been working on making tensor processing really, really fast. And that's been one of the 4 or 5 key breakthroughs was like the A100 class GPUs and the Tesla systems that have enabled this technology. Model or checkpoint, so that what it boils down to is you have a representation of a big data set that's been kind of boiled, super hyper compressed down into a file that you can download on your computer. And there are different versions of those. So for Stable Diffusion, there's the 1.3 model or checkpoint, the 1.4, the 1.5. At the end of the day, as far as a user is concerned, it's a file. Diffusion, it's a process of model-guided denoising to generate novel imagery. So you guys, some of you have seen my presentation on Stable Diffusion, but one of the big takeaways there is you actually start with noise and a tagged data set that says, highly compressed, like this is what a cat looks like, this is what a dog looks like, and you gradually denoise until you get something that looks like a cat or a dog, or if you put them together, a cat dog, and credibly looks like those things. Latent space is one of the other big breakthroughs that's happened in the last year or so, where instead of, let's say you've got an 8-dimensional data set, instead of storing it as an 8-dimensional data set, maybe there's a 4-dimensional data set that can also represent that thing. So that occurs in what's called a latent space, and that was kind of the breakthrough to let Stable Diffusion happen. GAN, or Generative Adversarial Network, another big breakthrough. The idea is you've got one piece of code that's generating output, another piece of code that's saying, is this a cat? And you run make a cat, not a cat, is a cat. Okay, we'll keep moving in this direction. And you have those things work against each other to generally improve the quality of the model. LLM, large language model. So ChatGPT is the one that everybody's really familiar with, but there are plenty of others. Natural language processing, NLP. There's also, interestingly enough, another NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which is a fascinating area, which actually bears a little bit in terms of like the way you program your subconscious and the way you generate prompts kind of are reminiscent of each other. So some of these ideas that sort of the broad public is just getting a hold of now have actually been around for a while under different guises. Python, Python's a high-level interpreted language. It's great because it has libraries for everything you could ever want. And in particular, it's great because all of the AI and ML tools use it. So if you're going to bother to learn one programming language and get ChatGPT to teach it to you, Python is the one to use for AI. CUDA, compute shaders, OpenCL, they all kind of mean the same thing, which is access to the super fast parallel processing on a GPU. CUDA happens to be NVIDIA technology. A lot of these tools use CUDA. There's going to be a big theme of how NVIDIA is clearly the winner in all of this. If anybody is watching the market this week, their market cap went up $200 billion this week. Mm-hmm. If you want a sense for how big of an economic deal this all is. Torch, along with transformers and diffusers, are some of the key libraries for working with ML and AI that everything uses these. And of course, cloud computing is just other people's computers. All right, there's a handful of companies and organizations you see over and over again. OpenAI, that's the parent company for ChatGPT and DALL-E. Hugging Face provides a lot of the models. They're open models. Stability AI was the open source company behind Stable Diffusion. NVIDIA, of course, is the GPU vendor, but also a lot of the tools are under the Omniverse moniker, and they've got some really impressive tech that they're basically giving away so that you'll buy their hardware. Microsoft, the parent company of Bing, of course, bought a big chunk of OpenAI, and they're integrating it with everything. Meta, Facebook is using these tools to build up Metaverse, and they've built a lot of really cool tools as well, which we'll talk about. Google has their BARD initiative. Google, of course, was sort of caught flat-footed a few months ago, and lost billions of dollars of market cap in a day. We wish them the best, of course. And Adobe, with their Firefly initiative, which came out yesterday, is going to be a big deal. All the feedback I've seen so far is, wow, this is so much better than everything else. All right, so every single AI paper I've read, and I've read like 30 of these now, has the same format. we started with this big tag data set. Here's a diagram of how we broke down the data set and put it back together. Here's a bunch of math, decrease dimensionality, throw neural in there someplace, run it for 3 weeks on a mega Tesla system for 87 bazillion cycles. Oh my goodness, that actually worked. Please use this responsibly. Don't, put up pictures of the Pentagon being bombed that aren't real or do other harmful things. They all have like 3 lines at the end. Like, oh, by the way, please don't hold us responsible. And of course, there's cool pictures. So, go to the paper, just look at the cool pictures. That's 90% of it. All right, so general tools, of course, the thing that everybody's talking about is ChatGPT. There's the reason this is the first slide of substance. I, of course, asked it for some general advice. As a live presenter at IGDA, what are 5 things that can do my presentation better? Think about the first time I encountered AI. I was back playing Ultima 4, and I found a secret door, and I opened it, and the monster followed me, and of course, that was all smoke and mirrors and beelines. It wasn't real AI. More recently, though, playing with ChatGPT and getting it to generate text, be like, speak in the voice of such and such author, and come to the realization that, oh, it's a better writer than I'm ever going to be. Like, I'm not bad, but it's better. And of course, ask open-ended questions to the audience. So, this is going to be lightning round here. 5 words, 5 seconds. What are you using ChatGPT for? ChatGPT for?
To help me get starter code when I forget the APIs for tech I haven't used in a while.
Yeah. Writing cover letters for jobs.
Generate image prompts.
Draft work from home policy.
Software development.
Anything language can do.
Sending my story.
Find the difference between 2 files.
Legit. So the big takeaway here is this tool, and it's a class of tools, but let's face it, ChatGPT 4 is ahead of the pack, is ridiculously powerful in a ridiculously large range of applications. I want to dwell on this a little bit to talk about something that Austin brought up, which is mentioned like, well, you've got to be a programmer, and you've got to be an artist, and you've got to be a marketer, and you've got to write business plans. So I'm cutting to the chase a little bit here, but I honest to God, I think the big takeaway, if you remember anything at all from this presentation, isn't this image tool or this movie tool or this animation tool. It's the fact that a single individual now, using the tools, can be a good enough programmer and a good enough audio person and a good enough advertising person and a good enough business plan writer. So I think the big thing we're going to see is Renaissance people coming out of this, where ChatGPT 3.5, I liken to like you have an extra 8th grader. They're very confident. They're going to give you an answer. ChatGPT 4 is like having an extra associate developer or an intern who, they're going to get stuff wrong. You need to double check their work. It's a pretty good start most of the time. All right, so code and internal tooling. I'm not going to read all of this, but one of the big things I've personally been using ChatGPT for is writing code. So as a concrete example, I think I'll show them off my Below the Rip project. Showed it at the
AADL.
Thank you. The thing at the library down the street. So a couple weeks ahead of that, I sat down with my daughter. She's 12, and was like, I've got some images, but I want to make this thing run. I know Python pretty well. I could go and figure it out and dig through Stack Overflow and dig through the docs. I'm not going to do that. We're going to say, all right, here's the list of things we want to get done. We're going to sit here today. We're going to go through this list. I think it's going to take 3 days. For every one of the items we're going to do, I want to get a window on the screen. ChatGPT, using Cocos 2D on Windows, how to get a window on the screen. All right, here's the instructions for what I have to install. Here's the code. Here's how you need to change out the image. And here's what the code did for you. We got through in 6 hours what I thought was going to take 3 days. In the months prior to that, I've been doing all this integration with spreadsheets and every single thing I did there took me 2 hours of digging through somebody's YouTube video and Stack Overflow and wait, this documentation's out of date. I went through and like, all right, this one example I know took me 2 hours. Oh, here's the answer. I know this took me 2 hours. Oh, here's the answer. So there's this huge accelerant factor. Similar to ChatGPT for code is also Find.com. Find is more oriented towards programming in particular. So instead of having like code that's just in the midst of all the text, there's a copy-paste button. You can copy-paste the code and put it in. And unlike ChatGPT, which will completely fabricate its bibliography, Find.com will actually be like, here are the citations. Here's where I found the information that I'm now feeding to you. And it can do real code. Like, I had a problem a couple weeks ago where I needed, like, in modern C++, a reentrant mutex. Like, not a trivial problem. And it gave me working code. Another one, just to flesh things out, is Hugging Face has the Replit tool. And this one's interesting because I asked it a question, and it gave me a little bit of code. Then I hit continue, and gave me a little bit more code. Then I hit continue, and gave me a little bit more code. And so that's what we're seeing here. Copilot. So Copilot is trained on all of GitHub. I have very mixed feelings about Copilot. So it's good for, I want to skeleton out some things. So the example here is like, I set up an enum, and I put in a to-do. I'm going to need a case for every direction, and it put in sort of the boilerplate code. So it's an accelerant, but it hallucinates a lot, and it doesn't know your entire code base. So when it can know your whole code base, and you develop in a consistent manner, so when it guesses better, I think this is going to be a big breakthrough. I don't know that I'm seeing $20 a month worth of value yet, but I think we'll get there pretty soon. AI shader. So this is a tool for, you want to write shaders. It plugs into Unity in this case. And of course, like many of the tools, you have to bring your own ChatGPT API key, thank you, with you. But it will generate HLSL, which is portable, and it does the thing you want it to, which, if you're an artist, and I need the shader to do a thing, and I don't want to call up Austin and be like, Austin, I need your help writing this HLSL. Like, it'll get you most of the way there. All right, before I go on, I do want to talk a little bit, I don't have a slide for this, but one of the big ways we've been able to use the code generation is for internal tooling. So we have a lot of structured data across many projects. And writing a custom tool that's going to edit each of those custom pieces of data and all their idiosyncrasies is a lot of work. Right? It's a lot of work. We've had remarkable success with paste in the schema or paste in an example of the CSV, and you're like, write me a Python program that puts up a simple UI to edit this. Copy paste, run it, and it works. So again, a huge accelerant. All right, graphic design tools. So I really wanted this one to be better. This is HiK. I wanted to be able to generate complicated SVG diagrams, so I could, generate trees and what have you. This is the closest thing I found, and it gave me some gradients and some colors. So not quite there yet, but emerging. A lot of these tools are emerging. Somebody got a cool idea. They set it up on a cloud service. They put up a website. They said, $10 a month, pay us a year in advance, and they hope they get enough business for that to be sustainable.
Hey, it's a good try.
Clearly, it's a decent model because everybody's doing it. You want to do some graphic design for branding. So this one was neat. It's like, what's your color scheme? What's your themes? What's the name? And it generates some kind of mediocre logos and such. But for $100, flat fee, you can get a brand kit, and it's probably good enough for 80%.
Yeah.
And is pretty cheap. And that's Looka. I don't know about what other studios are using, but we've definitely wholeheartedly adopted Figma as a great way of building, having designers build UIs that are then very easy to export into a custom format for use in game. Galileo.ai is a tool for starting with a text description and getting a basic Figma layout. I have not had the opportunity to mess with this one, so you get the screenshot off the website. The next step from that, of course, is you've got the Figma, and you really need some stub code. You know, again, you're a graphic designer, you need some stub code to hand off to the programmer to flesh out and put in behavior. Anima app is a way to do that. Relatively pricey, $40 a month. But if it saves, a handful of hours, it saves you a day, it's worth doing. And of course, it's sort of in a post-Flash world where we still need to be able to have some basic coding tied to UI quickly. This is a tool that addresses that. All right, 2D imagery. This is kind of a big area. Most of you have heard me talk at length about Stable Diffusion. The great thing about Stable Diffusion is it's open source, and there's a ton of people contributing to it, and there's a ton of great plugins, and it's literally getting better every week. And I'm seeing people put out results that are just like, it's real. It looks real. And there's great front ends where you can try it out. So I think this was Stable Diffusion Playground. I asked it for isometric view, PC strategy game, orcs versus humans, steampunk aesthetic. And I'm not going to drop any of the stuff straight into a game, but as a getting to a concept quickly, it's really pretty good. And that's one of the areas I see the image tools in particular, but also the audio tools as being a big breakthrough. Is every studio I've been at, not EA, but most of the studios I've been at, like you've got a creative director who's not necessarily a visual person, and you got a bunch of visual people, and they're not quite talking the same language, and that fuzzy front end of a project where you're trying to go from like, I got this picture in my head, but I don't know how to describe it to you. Well, I want to draw that picture that's in your head, but I don't know what you're talking about. This really closes that gap pretty dramatically in terms of like saving months of time and significant amounts of money. Great thing about Stable Diffusion is you can run it on your own hardware. With my Below the Root project, I think I ran it like 10,000 times over the course of a month or so, which even with some of the other tools that are relatively cheap, that would be cost prohibitive. So if you've got a decent GPU, you can run your own hardware. Recent thing that's emerged there is Stable Perfusion, which is a slightly different model. There are a lot of different checkpoints or models that you can use with Stable Diffusion. Most of them have a Hugging Face, but there's also like some anime-trained ones that can generate pretty convincing anime art. Of course, Midjourney. Everybody loves Midjourney. It gets good results, and it's got a nice, easy-to-use interface. Still relatively cheap. There are limits on how much you can produce, but the results are generally quite good. This is also an example from Alien GPT here. DALL-E, which is OpenAI's version, pretty pricey, 13 cents an image. That's real money. Start adding that up. But you do get the copyright for whatever that's worth. Some of these like Stable Diffusion, they're like, no, there's no copyrights. The whole copyright question, I know will come up in discussion. Like, that's a big open area that's going to work its way out in the community and the courts, and I don't know where that's going to land.
There's the solutions.
So
There's precedent already set.
You can use crypto and blockchains and software mixed with that to actually help to get people paid for projects if you're creative.
So there's going to be a lot of discussion in that area. So I don't want to dive too deep into that. Bing has released their image generator. It actually is just DALL-E, but it's got a nice wrap around it. It's free for now. You make 25 images a day. I was pretty happy with the results. The big one, though, is Adobe Firefly, which I hear is absolutely amazing and would have checked out, but it came out yesterday. A lot of the slides have been swapped out in the last week because this is a constantly moving target. But everybody I've encountered who's used Firefly says it's amazing, it's better than anything anybody else is doing. So go check it out. And there are a set of tools to take the image generation and make them better. So some of us don't have art history backgrounds, and I don't know what Conde means or any of these other fancy terms. So there's things like Prompt Builder with the web interface that will help get to the style, again, the style that's in my head that the AI tools are tagged on. If you, it's sort of garbage in, garbage out, or high quality in, high quality out. If you describe what you want with the right words, you're much more likely to get what you want out the other end. So Prompt Builder is a great tool for that. You can also train the models yourself. So a lot of what people are doing isn't necessarily training all of an image set themselves. They're doing micro-tuning. So in this case, I use Scenario.ai, and I fed it in 138 merit badges, I think, all clipped up into images the same size. It's like, I need a cybernetic brain on a merit badge. So I don't necessarily say any of those look convincing as cybernetic brains, but they all look like merit badges. And this one is free to try out, at least for now. Of course, most of you have seen the image-to-image work that I've been doing. This is actually sort of an image concrete, where I've put together several image-to-images. But you kind of get the picture that you can start with a prompt and an image, and get an image that matches both the prompt and the image that went in, and get some pretty good results. Other people are getting much better results than I am, but you can get some pretty good results. And that's available as a plugin for Stable Diffusion, and is sort of a modification to several of the other image generation tools. ControlNet is a pretty exciting one. So you've heard people talk about how hard hands are and trying to get the right pose on a character. So with ControlNet, which is a plugin for Stable Diffusion, you can start with an image and a pose, extract the pose, apply that to the generated image, and get pretty good correspondence between those things. There are also things that it does with extracting depth, for instance, but the pose is the big one I see people using. Also see people use it sort of to basically feed in line art and get fully colored illustration off the other end. Another one that came out Tuesday is DragGAN. The code is not available for this yet. It will be presented at SIGGRAPH, but this is amazing. So they're taking a couple of points on the given image. They track the motion of those points through the generation, and can do things like open the tiger or lion's mouth and hallucinate the teeth that are in the inside. This is really exciting. I can't wait to get to play with this one.
The wide stance of the horse.
It's nuts. It's just nuts. Okay, so one of the challenges I had going back to the houses and the trees was I really, instead of doing like that pastiche, I want the tree and the house and the ladders and the platform all together as one image. NVIDIA's tool, Edify, I don't know, I'm going to call it Edify, introduced two concepts. One is an ensemble of denoisers. So typically with denoising, like the first half of the steps are really getting from noise to kind of like a cat, and then the second half is going from kind of like a cat to, oh, that's a nice detailed cat. And their big realization was, well, this tool is really good for the first 40%, and this tool is really good for the next 20, and this tool is really good for this, et cetera, et cetera. Instead of using one tool for everything, line them up together, and you end up with a much better net result, an ensemble result. They also introduced the concept of paint with words. So there's an example there where the circle is a full moon, and they have different prompts driving different parts of the image, and get decently coherent results out the end. That source isn't available, and you can't run it. You just have to read the paper and wish you could. Except a number of people have actually come up with their variants of this. There's a couple different multi-diffusion projects, which I did not have particularly good luck with. But there's also Paint with Words, which again is an extension or plugin on top of Stable Diffusion. And their example doesn't look as good as the NVIDIA one, but I got halfway decent results out of it. I think we have to dive deeper onto this one. The plugin is actually hiding some of the dials that you still really kind of need. So I was able to get it to run. I think the jury's still out on this. You may just want to colorize your images. Palette FM does that. It's pretty expensive, 65 cents an image. I think that they're going to find that the market isn't actually going to support that. But it was neat to take some, I think this was somebody's Creative Commons D&D style art and try it in different palettes and see how they make you feel. Once you get into some of the more advanced tools, they depend upon things like having depth information, which is a problem if you're starting with a 2D image instead of a 3D model because you don't have any depth information. So this is one of the Hugging Face models, DPT depth, can extract that or sort of imagine that out of a 2D image. Similarly, SAM or Segment Anything model comes out of Meta, the Facebook people. They were kind enough to release it free and open source under Apache 2. It can see that that's a BMW and that's part of a grill on the front of it. It's very powerful. All right, gets us to 3D imagery. So in the last week, I discovered that NERFs were a thing. So NERF is a neural radiance field. Very exciting. The big idea there is if you have a three-dimensional surface and you have a BRDF, so bidirectional radiance distribution function, and you've got, which is typically a two-dimensional function, and you've got a camera in space, which is a three-dimensional function, now you've got an eight-dimensional problem, which is hard to solve. So there are some breakthroughs from NVIDIA and others to get the eight-dimensional problem down to kind of like a four-dimensional problem, and then solve it. So you can basically, this one starts from a handful of images and extracts a 3D renderable representation. So it might be a point cloud, it might be a mesh, it might be marching cubes of voxel model. NERF is another model. That's pretty slick. There are some other tools that do this. So there's Turbo NERF, NERF Studio, and Luma AI. Luma AI you can actually download on your phone if you have an iPhone 11 or higher. And you can capture your Legos as a NERF and then render them. I don't have an iPhone 11, so I couldn't try. NERF Segment Anything in 3D, so SA3D. Again, starting, I think this one starts with a single image. And then there's this crazy stuff where it's using diffusion to imagine what the thing might look like if you moved it a degree, and then another degree, and then another degree. And between back and forth of that and the NERF technology ends up building out a 3D model. Again, some of this stuff is kind of magic. Like even reading the papers, it's kind of magic. There's a similar product which is MS NERF, multi-space neural radiance fields, which got similar results. Of course, if you just want cars, there are great data sets for cars. One of the things that we've seen in 3D for 40 years now is automotive is regularly ahead of the curve. When it came to defining what BRDFs were, bidirectional radiance distribution functions, right? The initial data sets came out of Mitsubishi. They wanted to figure out how to represent car paint. Color models basically come out of automotive. They've got the problem of, I want this headliner to match this seat, to match this dashboard, and oh, by the way, they're produced in different parts of the world, and the timeline is such that they're never going to be in the same place at the same time until they've been put together in the factory, and they've got to look good together. Like that's several people's jobs, is figuring that out. Anyways, so you can start with an image of a car, and then get a 3D model of a car. I told my dad, and he basically called me a liar. But works. Logarithmic. I question whether I want to add this one in here or not. The website says AI, but you read their paper, and it doesn't seem supported by the actual text. But it does show us the notion of appearance. So you've got just the albedo, just the reflectance, just the normal map, and then you end up with an image at the end that combines those things together. and they have some fancy way of using lit up screens to get that. I think you guys have a lab that's got, reminded me of this.
Photogrammetry?
Yeah, it's real similar to photogrammetry. Make it 3D. So this is another case where they diffused an image and then kind of hallucinated, turning it a little bit, and we're able to extract a normal map and a diffuse map as a like 3D models. Really pretty cool. And this one's free and open source. You can go check it out yourself. Text to 3D. So Get 3D is also NVIDIA, also free and open source. They have models that are trained specifically on quadrupeds, or humans, or chairs, or cars, or motorcycles. And so if you want to sort of move the dial around describing a motorcycle, man, they can give you a pretty good looking motorcycle. If you want something that's not one of those 6 things, though, sorry. But it's definitely an example of where sort of you kind of take this like Platonic ideal and generate a model out of it. There's also Google's Dream Fusion. I don't think this one's ready for prime time, but I include it for the sake of completeness. I wouldn't call any of those models usable. And they look cool. Also free and open source. Sloyd, they've got a way of generating 3-dimensional models with sliders and AI. I wasn't blown away by any of these results. So I think the model generation, is still kind of up and coming. All right, we're to animation. So one of the challenges you run into in game development is you've got all these models and you need to rig them and animate them. And maybe you can write an auto rigger if it's a humanoid, but okay, now it's a helicopter, now it's a fox. Anything World claims to be able to solve this problem, I remain unconvinced. I went and downloaded some of their models that were animated, and I was not impressed. I would not use these in a commercial product. Now, they can change my mind. Like, it's gonna get better. I would say right now, today, it's not good enough. One of the problems you run into with Stable Diffusion is the problem of your different images aren't, like you generate the same thing 3 or 4 times and they're not quite the same. Temporal Kit is a free and open source project. GPL3, so you can't put it into your runtime, you can run it offline, that attempts to solve that problem. So you can see here, this is a fairly consistent animation. Video transfer, so again, one of the challenges, you might have a 2-dimensional piece of art that you want to get some animation onto. EBSynth is one of the tools. Beta is free and they haven't announced pricing yet, where they took a handful of still images and then matched it up to animation on a green screen and got pretty smooth animation off the other side. And some of their samples are pretty good. Dream Pose, I was really impressed by. So moving purely diffuse objects is one thing, but now you've got people with complicated materials that have satin or different kinds of reflectance models on them, and then hands that actually have to go behind or come in front. Dream Pose is an approach for solving that problem, where they've trained on a large number of fashion models. There's a fashion data set that you can get. That's every image is a set of animations that are certain matching size. The results from this were pretty good, and you can run it on your own hardware. Studio DAD, of course, I showed you guys that at the front. I want to play this video.
There's Klingons on the starboard bow. There's Klingons on the starboard bow.
That one didn't line up quite right. I can assure you that when I ran it, I'll go back to, there, nope, I want to go back one. I can assure you when I ran it just locally, that actually lined up very good. And it's trivial to use. It is, however, expensive. So Studio DAD, $5 a minute. That's pretty pricey.
Whoa.
Which of course you have to prepay. And if you don't use it all, well, you've already prepaid. But it is really easy to use, and the results are pretty good. There are some similar tools, Synestia, Movio, and Lalamu also have pretty good results. I found this one, Wave to Lip. They've also got Wave to Face, which is moves in, adds in some of the head motion, for instance. They have a low-res model that you can just download and run on your own software, or run on your own computer, which I, of course, did.
Willkommen zu meiner Präsentation über KI-Werkzeuge für die Spieleentwicklung.
So you can see there that the sync was actually pretty good, but the resolution was pretty low. I got that. So you need head motion. There's this technique called thin plate spline motion model for image animation. This one was free and open source. I was able to run it. You can see the image in the bottom left came out pretty decently. And that was very much just like chop up the head, drop it in, run the command line, and see what it came out as. Not perfect, but not bad. Definitely another big takeaway that everybody should be taking from this is don't believe anything you see on the internet ever again. Not that you should have prior to now, but
especially now.
We're going to be so deep in the age of propaganda in the next couple of years. It's kind of terrifying.
Really did. Yeah, look at what they do with memes.
Wonder Dynamics, so this might be really cool. The claim is they can drop in your 3D model on top of your video and have it line up with the voice and the animation. They've put together some really slick animations and don't have anything that you can try. So ask again in a couple months. But they've got a great website. This one, something it's going to animate. This one actually looked pretty slick. We're basically they're taking your video, they're extracting the motion, and you can throw it into a set of 3D models. And it's $1 a minute for video process. That seems sane to me.
Is it only humanoid bipeds, or is it?
I don't know.
Okay.
The video was bipeds.
Okay.
And an awful lot of these, this is Move AI, an awful lot of these you can upload your own video and try it out. Deep motion, similar concept, where it's extracting keyframe motion from video. Reasonable price, about a credit per second, so a penny to a dime per second. If it works well, it's all right. Another NVIDIA tool where they've taken an audio clip and mapped it to a very nice looking face where you can actually control, I don't know if it's controlling or extracting emotion. You can see this guy looks pretty good. He's relatively emotive. I'd be happy to have him in my next RPG. That'd be okay. A little less exciting is the audio to gesture, where of course there's a lot less training data for figuring out what people do with their hands when they're talking, but at least they're doing something with their hands while they're talking. That falls under the Omniverse license. MetaHuman Animator, if you haven't gone on Ars Technica or some of the other sites and watched the full video about this will blow your mind. This is truly, truly amazing. I just grabbed a short clip. Oh, actually, hold on, you can watch it right now. I thought ahead.
I need performance capture to work like a mirror. I needed to capture whether I'm acting scared or angry, but also subtle emotions. But sometimes all I need is a look.
So pretty good. I definitely think this is a tool that we'll all be using pretty soon here. Meta has put out their make a video, text to video. It's a cool concept. I don't think it's quite ready for prime time, but it's neat that it even exists. All right, now we're into voice. There are some pretty good tools and there are some amazing tools. We're going to start off with the pretty good ones. So this is Valley.
Instead of shoes, the old man wore boots with turnover tops and his blue coat had wide cuffs of gold braid.
So I'd call that pretty believable. Murph.
Forest is and was and will be, root and roof and all between. Pan fruit feed me, nibba hold me, peace and joy be evergreen. For it.
Not quite good enough, I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
Speechify. I also, Lovo is in about the same bucket, so let's do Speechify.
Forest is and was and will be, root and roof and all between.
Well, a little better. Still not quite there. Let's do Lovo.
Pan fruit feed me,
That's
bow hold me, peace and joy be evergreen.
So a little bit of emotion. We've got altered, which will go audio to audio, so you feed it in a performance, and it gives you a modified performance.
The good news is that we've got enough fuel to make it there and back. If we slingshot around this moon here when it reaches the edge of our orbit.
The bad news is,
Oh no.
we don't have enough oxygen. So either we jettison half the crew.
I'd call that good enough.
Yeah.
Altered is pretty good. So now we've got 11 multilingual. This one is cool because it's multilingual. And listen to the audio quality here.
Willkommen zu meiner Präsentation über KI-Werkzeuge für die Spieleentwicklung.
I'd call that believable.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the one that showed up yesterday. Do this one.
I don't like PyTorch, Kubernetes, or Schnitzel. And xylophones flummox me.
So this one actually has emotion, laughter, and can speak multiple languages in the same phrase, and can speak one language with the intonation of a different language. So it can speak English as a German native speaker.
Is this still 11?
No, we switched over to Bark. So Bark didn't get its own slide because it showed up yesterday.
Gotcha.
That's fair. So until I heard Bark, 11 was definitely my favorite. No, straight up you could ship this. You could ship 11. Bark, I think, there's a little bit of noise, so I think you'd have to have a soundscape in the background.
Or you can clean it up.
Or potentially you could clean it up, but Bark is really good. I've never heard anything that could do emotion and laughter credibly. The singing wasn't quite good enough. Like it can do singing, but not quite there. All right, so we're into music. So of course, one of the challenges you have in games is we make strategy games. How many hours do people play Gelsiv? Jesse? What's a typical amount of time somebody plays? 40? We have players that play like 2,000.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a lot of time to fill. So maybe your normals are 40, but that's a lot of time to fill. Mm-hmm. So there are some tools which help to make music withhold judgment for the moment. This is Boomy. This is Boomy. I'm going to say maybe I did something wrong. Boomy didn't make the cut. Infinite Album or Melodrive, their thing is we'll just continue generating music the whole time you play. So we're going to listen to 20 seconds of that. So yeah, basically no relation between the action and the music, and you can call it that. I'm going to say Infinite Album, not there yet. Ava, actually,
dramatized.
I'm gonna say not bad.
It's like the symphony background.
Yeah, symphony background. Soundful and Beat Oven are variants, but sound draw. I basically lets you adjust like the energy and such section by section. This is off the product website. I'm gonna say that's pretty good. So SoundDraw, definitely the winner so far. And then of course, within the last 5 days, Music LM became available. This is Google's project. So I put in here, ambient music piece featuring wind, flute, and wooden chimes, wistful feeling, exploring behind the treetops of a primeval forest, gliding through the air, jumping from limb to limb, melody and counter melody. All right. Not perfect by any means, but as a quick sketch, I'd say that's pretty good. Yeah. I think SoundDraw and Music LM probably both have legs. Splitter, which is based on the Splitter project. A lot of times you really just want part of a track. No, I don't want to watch this.
Site traffic is skyrocketing until.
What I really want to say, I can't define. What is love that I need? Oh, my soul like
So you kind of get the idea there that it has a 4-voice model that it kind of sort of splits things together.
That's hard for me to believe. That was open in reason. There were no artifacts. That one is a little bit of a stretch for me, I have to say.
I have not tried this one myself. So I couldn't figure out how to get it to run. But
Okay, of all the ones I've seen so far, this one's actually most interesting because, well, first of all, it actually helps that it's free. It's free because most of these are subscription-based models. It helps when you're on a budget like me. But I feel like you could also use that to make your own like custom radio jingles for the life, you know.
Cool. We've got just a handful more, and then we're going to switch to Q&A mode. Legal and socials. So if you need to write legal documents, Spellbook can get you in the right direction. I have not tried it, but it sounds cool. Need to generate your socials. Jasper can help you get there. $80 a month for 100,000 words. That seems like a sane price.
Yeah.
And of course, we're getting towards artificial general intelligence. I don't think we're there yet, but AutoGPT and Baby GPI and Agent GPT are doing some pretty amazing things. You have to bring your own OpenAI key again, but like I gave it the problem of create an animated sprite of a man wearing a silk glider, and it progressively broke that down into subproblems and subproblems and came up with the prompts to feed into the image generator, and then came up with prompts to generate the animations. And it's potentially really pretty powerful. I've seen some people solve some really complicated problems with this. Whether those are optimal solutions or not, almost doesn't matter in the sense that it can get you reasonably close and you can iterate from there. All right, that's all I have to say, except for the things I'm sure I forgot about.
All right,
So
Nathan,
open
thank
up the
you.
floor.
Wow. For what it's worth, that was only 55 minutes.
Oh, man.
Wow.
Pat, go ahead.
Have you seen any examples of AI being able to do our taxes for us?
I have not come across that particular example, but give it a week.
Yeah.
I actually found one and used it a few days ago from people at Blockade Labs, and they specifically have an AI generator that creates skyboxes, and they actually have it to where it starts off in the grid, and you can like look around. You can actually draw outlines of an environment to help guide the AI, and with the prompt that you write with it.
That's cool. Yeah, I definitely see a future where teams specialize these tools for their particular production needs. Like, I really want a UV unwrapper. I really want a skybox generator. I really want a potion maker. I really want a tree generator. Yes, sir, in the back row there.
What is the bottleneck on the time between I put in a prompt for something and I get the result? You think it'll ever be condensed in time, or maybe you could do it real time, like generating the next frame of the screen?
That's a great question. So there's two ways to go that. One is generating text, one is generating imagery. One thing that I see is right now everybody's going through OpenAI servers that are sitting somewhere in California or what have you, and you've got to wait in the queue for other people to get out of the way. I definitely see a place where everybody's just running a Tesla server in their closet and NVIDIA makes all the money. Like, I think that's where we're going to be in a year. With regard to generating imagery, that will definitely get faster. NVIDIA just announced the last couple of days, hey, our new drivers are twice as fast specifically for Stable Diffusion. And we're also seeing things where people are saying, you know what, 64-bit floats, that's too much. Well, 32-bit floats, that's too much. 16-bit floats, that's not too much. 8-bit floats, we can do 4-bit floats for our model and make it crazy fast. So we will definitely see significant acceleration. And the other part of it is, the more you can specialize, the faster it can get. So if your next frame looks a lot like your last frame, then that generation can be much faster than generating an arbitrary new frame. And that's actually a lot of what's going on with some of the tensor-driven tools like, was it DLSS? They're actually doing some of this stuff in the shaders now.
So question, because we've been playing with like Stable Diffusion and training our models and stuff. It's great for prototyping ideas, but it's actually very, and even with control, it's hard to get exactly what you want, right?
Yep.
So, but the question is there any tool where you create something and then it fixes a specific part of the picture or something like that? Let's say the arm is wrong or a hand is wrong and it fixes the hand.
Yeah, so there are actually a variety of tools for that. So there are tools that will just fix the eyes. There are tools that will just fix mouths. There are tools that will just fix hands.
Okay.
And a lot of those with Stable Diffusion are available as plugins. Okay. And that set of plugins, I can tell you what they are today and it will be different tomorrow. But yeah, and people are very specifically solving those problems. This guy.
You could do that now in Photoshop in the last couple of days. You could just circle like an arm or something, and then you could make it a robot arm. And just
see, I'm completely out of date.
Yeah, right inside Photoshop.
When you're building a big project and pulling from a lot of these different generators, how do you maintain a consistent authorial voice and tone and direction and point of view?
That's a great question. So I will say that I don't know anybody that's done a whole project driven by these tools. The Developer project I'm working on at least touches on some of that, where at least I'm trying to get a consistent visual style. And a lot of that's driven by all of my prompts have this set of words to be named. Photographic, side view, blah, blah, blah. Like there is a sub-prompt that feeds into the larger prompt that at least attempts that consistency. And I'm also doing funny things there where I'm doing lining up screens next to each other and doing image to image for the edges to get some kind of a flow from screen to screen. But yes, consistency is a big challenge. And I don't know that anybody's really fully cracked that yet. A lot of this this is all happening very fast, evolving very fast. I was telling this, but like, just figuring out this set of tools and getting a few of them to run has been a full-time hobby for months. So, like, we're really just starting to digest what is possible, and what is possible keeps changing. Yeah, and not like changing a little bit, but like things I didn't believe were possible last week suddenly are.
Sort of piggybacking off this last question, do you see like a specific company or like maybe institution that will try and unite all these things into one sort of usable AI tool, medium, I guess, of sorts?
Yeah, there are several entities that are trying that. Obviously, Adobe with Firefly is probably the leader of the pack. NVIDIA with their Omnisphere initiative has really invested a lot of money in trying to get people onto their tool chain, although they appear to be targeting industrial rather than targeting entertainment. I think they say, oh, entertainment's this big, industry's this big. We're going to put our money there. And then there are some like command line tools that will call out to each of the different generators within a unified interface. And you can see we're like OpenAI, well, they want to have their ChatGPT and their DALL-E and their other tools. Hugging Face has models for 24 different disciplines. I guess I'm trying to say, yes, I'm sure that a lot of different organizations are trying to own as much of that pie as they can, and we're just going to see how things play out.
This has been an amazing talk, and very grateful for it. I imagine at least a few members of the audience are feeling a bit existential after that. And so my question is, do you have any uplifting words that can put us at ease?
Sure. So a lot of it has to do with framing. So there's two different ways to look at this. One is, I was in the games industry 20 years ago before Unity was a thing, right? When Unreal cost $250,000 just to get Mark Wayne to call you back, give or take, right? Where you, like, if you didn't have $1 million, you weren't making a game. And then Unity became available and Unreal became reasonable, and suddenly we've got Spellbound. Suddenly we've got the guys who are making the Plan Your Bridal Party. There are all of these adjacent markets that suddenly become viable when your entry level isn't here, it's here. So yes, there's definitely going to be displacement. Yes, everybody should be staring at the navel a little bit. But ultimately, I think that the total market for the kinds of things we all do or want to do is going to end up being much larger. If you don't define yourself as, I just make games, but change, like, I'm using a set of technologies to achieve a set of goals related to this core interest. The other angle of taking on this in terms of reframing is, like, I could see myself as a software developer, in which case, like, some of this is pretty scary. Like, ChatGPT can do a lot of my job. Or do I see myself as, like, I'm a game developer in new product development, and this was just one of the hats I had to wear in order to do this thing that's actually my vocation. So if, like, you have the mindset of, I am a concept artist and that's it, I've got bad news. If it's, I'm a creative and I'm using all the tools I have available to each set of goals, I've got good news.
Excellent. Thank you.
I noticed in the beginning you mentioned a lot of these things are sort of good enough. I have to wonder, are you entirely convinced that they will get to a point where they will be like as good as anything else, as an average person, as not an average person, but as a person who's been training and doing that stuff for years could do, or are you less convinced of that being it?
Oh, I'm pretty well convinced. And if you just look at the rate of growth we've seen month over month, week over week, we're very much in an exponential curve. I see pictures come out on a daily basis that, like, they look real. Okay. I think the tools are going to get there. guy with the goatee.
So like in game development, you're like gluing a lot of things together. Do you think AI is going to be able to do the part where it glues things together?
No, I think that's a great question. So this kind of comes back to reframing. Like, if you frame yourself as a content artist or a programmer or what have you, or do you frame yourself as like a system integrator? Like it takes sort of the higher intelligence that humans, for the moment, still solely claim to find the heart of the thing and get the pieces into a coherent whole. We've still got a lead there. We still have general intelligence, and the computers don't yet.
All right. Any final questions?
You got,
I kind of have a two-part. One is, of all the tools that you've kind of done like a deeper dive on, what percentage of them would you say actually display meaningful information about the data sets they were trained on? Like, what percentage of them actually tell you where they got ultimately derived all this stuff from? And my follow-up question would be that, based on that, having access to that knowledge or not, how comfortable would you say you are personally shipping a product that has a significant amount of AI generated art, knowing that Getty Images might own 20% of it if the wrong legal ruling comes down 6 months from now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'd say most of the tools that I've messed with have academic papers attached with them, which are very upfront about, here's the data set, here's where you can download it. So most of them are upfront, and I'm relatively comfortable with. I think the Getty question's a good one. I will say that for the things which I have personally been generating imagery on, like trees and vine ropes and such, I'm not worried about it. Like, I don't think anybody's going to sue me for a tree. But I definitely think it's potentially dicey, depending on which kind of imagery you're getting to and how specific you are on your prompts. That, I really want something that looks like this living artist. I don't know that I would put that in my prompts.
Sure. In things like, AI to offer you a mortgage and things like that, we see a lot of racism and sexism that was embedded in the system being repeated by the AI because that's the data it was trained on. Are you seeing a lot of that in what you see as you're looking at these things, or?
I see a lot of discussion on that front.
Yeah.
I would not say that I personally have seen outputs which indicate those kinds of biases. But I've certainly seen plenty of articles that say, well, these biases are clearly here. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you said that it's kind of one group that's doing a lot of the training data. Perhaps they're looking for that in the data sets.
I will say that what I've seen come out of ChatGPT, there is obviously a thumb on the scale as to what does or doesn't come out of it. There's an awful lot of, as an AI model, I can't answer that question because, all of which can be subverted with the right prompts.
Like the napalm thing?
They try real hard.
Yeah.
I had a question about collaboration. I'm a music composer, so a lot of my work involves sitting down with the client and asking, what do you want? How do you want this to sound? Now, as someone like yourself, would you prefer to sit with someone and go, I want these kinds of sounds, or check this with Siri GPT and try to get something back that you think works?
I would probably want to spend the first amount of time narrowing down my ideas a little bit, and then go to a real human being who actually knows what they're doing to go the last 20%.
This is an existential one.
Fine.
And inspired by some of the stuff you were talking about. In terms of, let's say, game design, when it comes to AI and what it can do, which portion of the creative process do you personally not want to lose?
I don't have a good answer to that question. Again, because I work in more of a technical angle on things. where I'm largely fulfilling somebody else's vision, and if there are tools that can make that faster and take some of the really banal work out, then I'm all about it.
Yeah. Sorry. My bad.
Right, because I guess getting more dread-based again, it's cool to make stuff go happen faster and create with less, but then it's like, oh shit, what if people start feeding even the core idea and the very innate, the initial conceptualization then becomes generated, and then it's like.
I would prefer to think of it as a dialogue.
I also think that if you over rely on that AI stuff, they're kind of gonna get especially for your core ideas, they're gonna get swamped. I don't know that it's particularly capable of exceptionally creative in that regard.
Maybe we should switch to discuss amongst yourselves.
Yeah. All right. Any final questions?
Anything? Did you want to talk about NVIDIA?
I actually did cover that one.
Okay.
I think. Yeah, I did.
I might have been out of group.
Do you know of any other major AI model repositories aside from Hugging Face?
No, that's really the big one.
Sure. You were saying that specialized people, I'm a concept artist, I'm a programmer, those are the people who should be kind of worried about hey, you need to be more broad and wear different hats, right? But then I've also heard a lot of people say, for me who wants to get into a more professional environment rather than, I'm an indie game developer and I do everything myself. It's kind of backwards, right? Because you're told to specialize, but now it's don't specialize because AI might take your job. So it's where is the line there, right? Of I'm a more technical person programmer, I don't like art. But where do you draw the line of, don't get that specific, because ChatGPT will do it for you in 2 months.
I wish I had a good answer to your question, but I do not.
Thank you for hearing me out.
Oh no, I got the internal dialogue going. Don't worry.
Okay. Any final questions? Final one.
Do you think AI could start replicating things like coming up with mechanics and systems design, sort of trying to understand player psychology and what they would think, what mechanics would be fun?
It can certainly serve up a bunch of ideas. It's a good idea generator. It's not necessarily good at figuring out which one is good, but it'll give you 20 ideas.
All right. Nathan, thanks for everything you do.